We were 3 pina coladas into our second night in Maui when I realized something wasn't right. Amber laughed a little too loudly at David's joke, her fingers grazing his forearm just a second too long. I smiled tightly, watching from across the table as she leaned in, letting her silk wrap fall from one shoulder like it was an accident. David shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me, then quickly back down at his drink. I didn't say anything. Not yet. This trip was supposed to be about us, David and me. 15 years of marriage, hard-won and still intact, despite careers, aging parents, and the kind of arguments that sneak into long-term love like mold in the corners of your kitchen. And then Amber had called, crying, frantic, saying she couldn't bear to be alone after her breakup. "I'll stay out of your way," she promised. "I just need the sunshine. Please." I'd said yes. Of course I had. She was my best friend. 20 years of secrets and sleepovers and champagne at midnight. But now, sitting at a candlelit beachfront table with her laughings like a high school crush, and David looking more and more like a hostage, I saw it, clear as the moon rising behind her bare shoulders. She hadn't come to heal. She'd come to hunt. And I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. I was going to let her walk straight into the trap she thought she was setting. Because I'd already prepared the table, and I knew exactly what would be served. The next morning, Amber bounced into the hotel lobby wearing a barely-there bikini and a sheer white cover-up that did nothing to actually cover anything. "Boat tour day," she chirped, flashing David a grin that lingered too long before turning to me. "You sure you're feeling up to it, Mel? You looked a little pale at breakfast." "I'm fine," I said, tightening the strap on my sun hat. "Wouldn't miss it." She blinked, momentarily caught off guard. I smiled. It wasn't the sugary kind I used to give her. This one had teeth. We boarded the catamaran just after noon. Amber positioned herself next to David during the safety, briefing, nudging his arm whenever the captain cracked a joke. I pretended not to notice. I was busy pretending not to notice a lot of things. She accidentally dropped her towel near his feet. She offered him sunscreen, uninvited, starting to rub it into his shoulders until he stiffened and stepped away. "You okay, man?" the crew member asked as David backed into the rail. "Yeah," he muttered. "Just a little too much sun." He didn't meet my eyes, but I saw the apology in his silence. That night, we returned to the suite. Amber slipped off early to take a long, hot bath and call her therapist, leaving David and me alone on the balcony with a bottle of wine and a view that should have felt romantic. But it didn't. Not yet. "She's being weird," Davidi finally said. I tilted my head. "Weird." He hesitated. "Too touchy. Too much." I let him sit with it. "She's your friend," he added, but his voice had lost conviction. "She was," I replied. He looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw the discomfort behind his eyes. The weight of being polite to someone pushing, past invisible lines, the guilt of not telling me sooner, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. "Don't worry," I said. "I see everything." I stood up and pressed a kiss to his temple. "Let's go to bed," I added. "Tomorrow's the fancy dinner, remember?" He nodded, relief washing over his face. And as he went to brush his teeth, I pulled a small digital voice recorder from my bag and slipped it under the pillow on my side of the bed, already powered on, battery full. I wasn't hoping for anything. I was just done, pretending I couldn't see. It was time to listen. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early. I made a show of yawning through our final sips of wine, brushing my teeth slowly, and crawling under the hotel duvet, with a soft, sleepy sigh. I even left the bottle of melatonin gummies on the nightstand, open just enough to suggest I'd taken one. David kissed my forehead and returned to the balcony to finish his chapter. He always read before bed. I let my breathing deepen. Body still, one hand tucked under the pillow where the recorder was gently humming, capturing everything. The suite fell quiet. I kept my eyes closed, but senses sharp, counting every creak, every movement. After what felt like 30 minutes, I heard the faint click of the door, the second key unlocking, soft footsteps, bare feet on tile. Then her voice, low, sweet, scripted. "Is she out?" Amber whispered. I didn't move. A pause. Then David's voice, flat, tired. "Amber, what the hell are you doing?" "I couldn't sleep," she said, inching closer. "I thought maybe we could talk." More silence. I imagined her standing in the dark in some lacy little nothing, feigning innocence like it hadn't been choreographed months in advance. "I don't think Melissa really sees you," Amber continued. "Not the way I do. You're wasted in that marriage, David." "Stop," he said. His voice was sharper now. "You know this isn't just some spontaneous thing," she went on. "I've felt this way for a long time, haven't you?" I could hear her moving again. Closer. My stomach tightened, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not doing this," David said firmly. "Get out." She laughed, breathy and wounded. "Why?" "She doesn't appreciate you. She controls everything, even this trip, this perfect little trip." "Yeah, because it's our anniversary," he snapped, "and because she's my wife." There it was. The line she couldn't cross. "I think you should leave," he added. Her voice cracked. "David, please." But he didn't say anything more. A few seconds later, the door clicked shut again. Waited until the room settled into silence, then slowly opened my eyes. David was sitting on the edge of the bed, his back to me, hands cradling his face. I reached out, touched his shoulder. He turned, startled. "You were awake?" he whispered. "I was," I said quietly. "And so was the recorder." His eyes widened, but I shook my head. "It's okay." I sat up slowly, picked up the small device, and hit stop. The red light faded. "You didn't do anything wrong," I told him. "And now I don't just believe you. I know." He stared at me for a long moment, then softly. "What are you going to do?" I smiled. "Breakfast," I said. "But not for us." And with that, I picked up my phone and called room service. The sun rose slow and golden over the Pacific, casting soft light across the balcony where I had just finished setting the table. White linen, fresh fruit, 2 glasses of mango juice, 1 envelope, 1 tablet. David stood beside me, still quiet, still processing, but steady. I could tell part of him wanted to look away from all of this, pretend it never happened. But the other part, the stronger part, stood there with me, waiting. At exactly 8 a.m., there was a knock on the suite door. Amber stepped in, dressed like she hadn't slept, oversized sunglasses, no makeup. She looked straight at me, then at the table, and hesitated. "I thought you said breakfast," she said, voice brittle. "I did," I said, gesturing to the balcony. "Please, sit." She looked between us, uncertain. David didn't move. He didn't smile. Amber walked over, slowly, and sat down, removing her sunglasses like she was trying to read the room. "Look, if this is about last night, It is, I cut in calmly. Then I picked up the tablet and tapped play. Amber's voice filled the morning air. Is she out? You're wasted in that marriage, David. I've felt this way for a long time. Amber paled, her hands clenched in her lap. What is this? Insurance, I said, in case you ever decide to twist the story. Because I know you, and I know how you rewrite history when it doesn't go your way. I slid the envelope across the table. Inside was a printed copy of the audio transcript, a one-way first-class ticket back to Chicago departing that afternoon, and a letter on official letterhead from our attorney. David spoke for the first time since she'd arrived. It's a cease and desist, he said. Harassment, defamation, attempted coercion. Our lawyer has copies of everything. I suggest you don't test how far this can go. Amber's mouth dropped open, then closed. This is insane, she hissed. You planned this? No, I said evenly. You did. You just weren't very good at it. She stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. I hope you two enjoy your perfect little marriage. She spat. We do, I said. Especially now. Amber grabbed the envelope with shaking hands, stormed back into the suite, and slammed the door on her way out. David turned to me. You didn't have to go that far. I looked at him. Didn't I? He nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess you did. And then he pulled out my chair, sat beside me, and reached for the mango juice. Happy anniversary, I said, raising my glass. He clinked it gently with his own. To clarity. And beneath the bright Hawaiian sky, we sipped, silent and steady. Finally, together. After Amber left, the suite felt lighter. Not just because she was gone, but because the weight of pretending was finally over. David and I sat on the balcony for nearly an hour, saying almost nothing. The sea breeze curled between us like punctuation between thoughts. I think we were both letting it settle. The absurdity, the betrayal, and the strange calm that follows when you finally act instead of swallow. He reached across the table and took my hand. I should have told you sooner, he said. She made me uncomfortable from the second night, but I didn't want to cause tension between you two. You didn't owe her silence, I said. You owed me honesty. His eyes softened. You're right, and I'm sorry. That was enough. Because the truth was, David hadn't betrayed me. He'd held the line, even when she crossed it, again and again. And now that the dust was settling, I wasn't angry. I was proud. We spent the rest of the day doing what we came, to Hawaii to do no itinerary, no forced smiles. We walked the beach barefoot, wandered into a local art gallery, shared street-side poke bowls, and laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in days. That night, instead of going to the candlelit resort dinner I'd originally booked, we ordered room service and ate in bed, still in beach clothes, legs tangled in sun-warmed sheets. I asked him, "Do you think she'll actually go home?" He nodded. "She'll go. Maybe not quietly, but she'll go. She knows she lost." I paused. "Do you think I was too harsh?" "No," he said without hesitation. "You were measured, strategic, and honestly, kind considering." I smiled, resting my head against his chest. She played a long game. He kissed my forehead. "And you played it better." Before we turned in for the night, I pulled out my phone and deleted the recording. Not because I needed to, but because the moment had passed. The evidence had done its job. Justice had been served. And now, it was time to put it down. so we could finally pick each other up. When we returned home to San Diego, the house felt different. Not because anything had changed in the decor or the lighting or the framed wedding photos in the hallway, but because we were different. Something in the foundation had shifted. What we had built over 15 years had been tested, cracked, and held. The night after we unpacked, David poured 2 glasses of wine and joined me on the patio. "I keep thinking about how quiet you were through all of it," he said. "You didn't explode. You didn't accuse. You just watched." "I had to be sure," I replied. "Not just about her, but about you." He nodded slowly. "And?" "You passed." He smiled. Not out of pride, but relief. We talked late. Into the night. About things we hadn't talked about in years. Not just Amber, but trust, privacy, boundaries. How easy it is to let familiarity replace intentionality in marriage. He told me how he'd seen the signs in Amber, how he'd tried to brush them off, and how uncomfortable he felt from the start. I told him about the moment I'd decided to stop reacting and start documenting. "That's the event planner in you," he said. "Always 5 steps ahead." "I only needed 3, I said. "Record, reveal, remove." He laughed, shaking his head. "You're terrifying." "I'm thorough," I corrected. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Friends who had heard rumors about what happened in Hawaii, though not the full story, started reaching out, some with disbelief, others with admiration, and a few with quiet confessions of similar experiences, betrayals from people they thought were safe. I started writing it all down, not to publish, not for revenge, just to remember. Because the lesson wasn't just about Amber. It was about intuition, about not gaslighting yourself into politeness, about protecting your space, even from people who once had a key to it. David and I made new rules, unspoken but understood. We didn't let just anyone close anymore. We didn't share everything out of habit, and we never again mistook loyalty for obligation. The night before our next anniversary, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "To my wife, who saw the storm coming and never raised her voice. She just raised the standard." I didn't cry. I didn't need to. I'd already chosen myself and he had chosen me too. 1 year later, we returned to Hawaii, not to the same resort, not to the same suite, but close enough to walk the same beach, hear the same waves, and breathe in the same air, only this time, without the weight of someone else's deception hanging over our heads. It was a quiet trip. No big dinners, no Instagram photos, no fake smiles. Just us. Real, tired, grateful, and whole. On our last night, we walked down to the shoreline just before sunset, the sky melting into soft lavender and gold. David slipped his hand into mine as we walked barefoot through the sand, waves lapping at our ankles. "She never apologized," I said out of nowhere. He looked over at me. "Would it have mattered?" I shook my head. "Not really." Silence hung between us for a while, but it wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, like a door that had closed, so softly you didn't even hear the click, just felt the stillness after. "I think that trip saved us," he said finally. "No," I corrected, glancing at him. "We saved us." Back at the hotel, I opened my laptop and finished the last paragraph of the essay I'd been quietly working on for months. I titled it, "The Friend Who Mistook My Husband for a Backup Plan." I didn't name names. I didn't write it for pity or praise. I wrote it for the women who see the signs but are told they're paranoid. For the wives who get warned they're controlling when they draw boundaries. For the women who swallow too much for the sake of peace and forget that peace without respect is performance. I hit save, closed the laptop, and joined David on the balcony. He handed me a glass of wine. "To us," he said. I raised mine. To surviving betrayal without becoming bitter. And for the first time since that unforgettable breakfast, a year ago, I finally felt it. The full circle quiet, the calm after the test, the security of knowing that love can be loyal if you hold your line and let the truth serve itself. She tried to steal my marriage with charm. I protected it with clarity. And when the waiter brought the truth to the table, I didn't flinch. Just let her taste what she'd cooked. And that's how I learned that some friendships don't deserve confrontation. They deserve documentation and delivery. Would you have played it the same way? Tell me in the comments. Tap like if you believe. Calm revenge is the sharpest blade. And subscribe for more real stories of betrayal and quiet justice. Share this with someone who trusts their instincts more than a smile.